Okay, I am calling to order the Board of Assessors meeting for Lakeville at 5:02 p.m. on November 18th. In accordance with the provisions allowed by Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this public meeting of the Board of Assessors will be held remotely. However, to view this meeting in progress, please go to facebook.com/LakeCAM. You do not need a Facebook account to view the meeting. This meeting will be recorded and available to be viewed at a later date at LakeCAM.tv. So I believe we have everyone we need on the call at this point. Hello, Harald. How are you?
Hey, good evening.
You still haven't broken out of that jail cell yet, huh?
No, I have not.
All right. Well, I know this is a busy time of year for you, and I'm sure you have 1,000 things to do. So why don't we jump right into it? Do we have any public comment? Is anybody on Facebook looking to say anything to us at this point?
No one so far.
Okay. We were distributed the meeting minutes from September 29th. I'm assuming or hoping we've had a chance to review those. Actually, I'm remiss in announcing that Mr. Pink will not be joining us for our meeting today. He reached out to me a little while ago, and he unfortunately will not be able to make it. So just Dave and I will be here, which is fine because that constitutes a quorum. So having said that, I will entertain a motion to approve the September 29th meeting minutes.
So moved.
I will second that. Any discussion? All in favor? Dave?
Aye.
And I'm in favor as well. Motion carries. Just a reminder that we need to stop by when we get a chance to the actual office to sign our most recent motor vehicle reports and vision statutory exemption reports. Okay, next agenda item is, I'm going to turn it over to Harald. We have a question in regards to a statutory exemption, which I believe Linda has brought you up to date on, and I think we may have attempted to address this at a prior meeting, but we maybe didn't have all the accurate information. So I'll turn it over to you, Harald.
Yeah, and I'm going to have to rely partly on David on this. It's been about a month since we've taken up discussion on this. I know there was a generic question about what I assumed was a clause 41A request for a tax deferral and learning of a person's reverse mortgage, whether there was a conflict there, a potential conflict. And you'll recall that I said that on a 41A deferral, the application calls for the property owner to get a bank approval of the deferral, because in effect it's creating a double reverse mortgage situation. After we came out of that meeting, I came back to the office, spoke to Linda, and I guess I didn't realize that there was a bit more to the story. And it, I guess, had something more to do with the counting of income. You've got a reverse mortgage situation where the property owner is actually drawing income that would potentially cause the applicant to exceed the income threshold. Do you recall, David? Did I get this story right?
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah. So
it sounds like the question is, there's a income threshold to the statutory exemptions that if they're under a certain income level, we provide the exemption. And the question is, are we supposed to incorporate the income from the reverse mortgage in the total income, or aren't we supposed to, which in effect would deem the exemption, they would be eligible for the exemption, correct? Sounds like.
Yeah, so there is that piece of it, but again, operating a little bit from recollection, the amount that they're drawing on this reverse mortgage, along with other income, puts them below that threshold. So,
So if they're below the threshold with all of their income in aggregate, including the reverse mortgage income, maybe I'm missing something. I'm confused. Is there even a question? Because if they're below that threshold, then almost doesn't, the way I'm interpreting it, doesn't matter where it's coming from. If you're underneath the threshold, you're underneath the threshold. Is that, am I oversimplifying this?
That is correct. David, do you want to weigh in? Do you have that application in front of you?
I do not have it in front of me. I think you nailed the problem statement, Harold. I think if there is, if the person in threshold though was the main question.
Yeah. So I guess the sense of the matter, and again, I apologize. It's been a month since I reviewed that application, but I know that we were that I had looked at it and felt under the that the income was sufficiently under the income threshold to allow the person to qualify for the 41A. There is also an asset issue, and I guess this is an interpretive matter of the board, but on an asset test basis, there is in this situation no asset problem. You'll know on any exemption that we don't typically count the primary residence in the asset calculation.
Okay, so it sounds like we're stumbling a little here to I don't want to say stumbling in the sense that we don't know what the statutory exemptions are, but in the particulars possibly of this situation because it's a little older. So in an effort to try to kind of dispose of this, maybe we could look at this from two perspectives. One, we shouldn't be using the residence in a litmus test as far as what an individual has for assets, because I'm guessing that has to do with if you have a whole bunch of assets, you can liquidate them to generate the income to pay the taxes, but we don't use a primary residence. So I'm assuming if that's not statutory, you need us to render a decision that we agree that that's the way it should be interpreted. Like that's the first part.
Well, that is statutory, so there's no question.
Okay, there's no question. So we can't do that. So I guess the question then is, if their income in aggregate is under the threshold, there really isn't a question. I think it still has to come to us and we have to sign off on it. But if for some reason we're misremembering, which I know really isn't a word, the actual dollar amounts, the question could potentially be for this in the future, maybe, do we incorporate the reverse mortgage income in the income measured for the threshold to receive the exemption? Is that statutory or is that our decision?
Well, that's an interpretive decision of the board.
Okay. So maybe we can make a decision on that. So if indeed that is the one hanging chad, so to speak, on this scenario, Linda will have direction. But in addition, she'll have direction going forward when somebody comes in and is kind of borderline with the threshold, whether she should or shouldn't incorporate that as an exemption that the town will be willing to grant.
Yes, I think that's the overall problem that needs to be solved.
Okay, so I'll make one comment, and I guess since they're depleting their residence, their primary residence, I'm not so sure I would necessarily want to incorporate that income value towards the threshold as to whether or not they have the ability or should be paying their whether they should or shouldn't be granted that exemption. I think they should still be. I think that's probably what the one exception maybe that we should that we should forgive and not include in their income. But that's just my opinion. Maybe I'm not looking at it from another vantage point that we could be. So I don't know if Dave has any comments or thoughts, or if we've completely confused you at this point.
Yeah, I'd honestly have to look into it more to make a decision on that. I follow, but not 100%, so I can't say.
Rob, can you try to define what I did a horrible job at?
Well, so when a person applies for a statutory exemption, depending on the exemption or even deferral, there are typically two tests. One is an income test. There's a certain threshold over which the person doesn't qualify. The second is an asset test. And so with respect to the asset test, do we count the value of that reverse mortgage as a part of the asset count? Typically, the assets we're looking at are monetary assets, the value of their savings account, bank account. I don't typically count IRAs or retirement accounts in that asset test, nor do I include the surrender value of an insurance policy. I'm just looking straight at bank accounts and maybe stock portfolio balances.
And that reverse mortgage is actually leveraged against the equity in the individual's residential home, which by statute, we're not supposed to include as an asset either, correct?
That's an excellent point.
So that's the only reason I'm taking the position that I think whether it's the actual house value or someone has capitalized it by giving them a reverse mortgage, it's one and the same, because the equity is all derived from their residential home. So again, I'm not saying that's the right answer, but just for clarification, that's kind of why I'm coming up with that mindset.
Do we know if this reverse mortgage is a monthly payment to the homeowner, or is it a lump sum?
Typically, it's handled as an annuity, like an annuity. They receive a monthly payment. So that comes to the second question about income. You could have potentially $500,000 of value in your house at your disposal. You could take it as a lump sum, or you could take it as 5 $100,000 payments, or you could be more prudent and take it as like a $5,000 a year or $500 a month add to your Social Security check. On that basis, we'd be looking at what they're drawing each month from that reverse mortgage and counting that along with other income and determine whether they fall below the exemption income threshold.
Yeah, I would agree. I think you should include it in the income portion of the test.
Yeah.
Now, not including any IRAs or retirements, is that standard across the board in the state, or is that something that we just do here in Lakeville?
Well, that's
someone could have $1 million in their retirement account and very little liquid assets and possibly qualify for an exemption that they really shouldn't be granted.
well, the DOR doesn't give us a whole lot of guidance there. So I think personally, most boards that have come down on the side of not counting any sort of a retirement fund into the asset calculation.
Yeah, but Dave has a good point. I mean, someone who turns around and has a situation where they have a $3 million home and $5 million in retirement annuities and whatever the case may be. I don't think that's really what the statutory exemption is designed for. I think it's obviously designed to help people as they age who income is is dropping off, be able to not have their house taken by the municipality, in this case Lakeville, because they can't make their tax payments. If they turn around and design it so they're showing $15,000 a year in income, but they have all these, have this one large asset in a house, and are deriving income off of retirement savings. Are you saying you don't count the retirement accounts as assets, or you don't count the income from them, Harold?
No, we do count the income, but not the value of the retirement account. So you might have $250,000. You might have an IRA account valued at $250,000, and that retirement account might yield you a $10,000 a year annuity in retirement. That $10,000 clearly, I think, would be added to any Social Security you receive to see whether you qualify.
Are there that many statutory exemptions applications a year in our town?
Well, we have a fairly old population, but I would say really the vast majority, if not all of the folks that apply, are really living on the edge financially.
So from that standpoint, you'd rather let one or two people slip by versus making it overly difficult to qualify for those that really need it.
Mm-hmm.
That's my view.
I'd agree.
Let me ask a question, Harold. I mean, obviously, when these people submit applications, we ask for, income verification and asset verification. Do we normally get everything? And my question is, I mean, I'm not opposed to making this more cumbersome, but I mean, Dave brings up a great point. If somebody sends in and says, "Oh, here's my income level," which is below the threshold, but they send everything else in, and a couple of things you said that you don't include retirement savings accounts that aren't, not the income from those gets included, but the accounts themselves. I mean, the board could probably make a decision based on, wait a minute, this person has a house that's worth $3 million, and they have, $2 million in a retirement account, whatever the number is. We could probably do an eyeball test that tells us, maybe this is the one who doesn't deserve it. I prefer to err on the side of caution and not have somebody miss out who really deserves it. And it sounds like the majority are, but I'm just curious as to how much information we get. Would we have enough to know if there are situations where people shouldn't be receiving it?
We require them to provide their Social Security statement, a bank statement showing their bank balances, and also any statements that will come to them relative to retirement or such. And if we receive an application where that documentation isn't provided, Linda does follow up and ask for it.
How do we verify that we're getting that, or it's just that they're signing pains of perjury?
Yeah, we're relying on people to be honest. I mean, obviously, somebody could claim that all they receive is Social Security and withhold information about other income, but we do rely on people to be forthcoming and honest.
And here I thought this one agenda item was going to be a simple one. Pink
Well,
knew what he was.
we should do some spot checking.
This one.
Well, I think it can be. I think all we're asking you to acknowledge is that the value of a reverse mortgage in this particular case, the value, the potential value would not be counted somehow as an asset in the asset calculation.
You know what? In general, I agree with that. But, my concern is, as Dave pointed out, somebody has a $3 million home. I'm not so sure that they necessarily shouldn't have that counted in. I'm not percent on board with that argument, but I think it's a very good question.
The only time when I've seen that sort of an extreme where somebody owns an incredibly valuable home is closer into Boston, where you have old timers who are real estate rich but income poor.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. I think that's the only real question I have in my mind is, are we? And I guess to Dave's point, the greater issue is making sure we don't penalize somebody who really doesn't.
And honestly, the lion's share of whatever exemptions we grant are reimbursed to us by the Commonwealth.
Right.
So,
Do we ever do, I think you said the word deferment or whatever the word is, does it ever get added on and then they pay it back at the time of sale? Or is it just a complete?
that would happen on a deferral, property tax deferral, where they can just outright defer all or part of their annual property taxes until they either sell the house or die.
Okay, I'm on board with agreeing that the reverse mortgage is not an asset. If that's the bottom line question.
How about the asset itself? Well, the asset, the income, I guess, is the real question, because you said the income. The income. Okay. Yeah, I think I'll stick with that. Dave did make a good point, but I guess it'd be pretty cumbersome for us to really start going through the process of literally requesting and verifying every single one of these that comes in. Because correct me if I'm wrong, Harold, we do have a fair amount. I do remember that, over the years, we do have an aging population in Lakeville. As much as we have a lot of young people moving in, the older people aren't moving out that fast.
We also note that among the seniors, they tend to, for the most part, be fairly well off. Their mortgages are paid off. They've got, they're living well. We're really talking about the folks at the bottom end of that income spectrum. And I'm trying to remember. I think we grant something on the line of 100, 125 exemptions, as I recall. It's not a huge number.
All right, so to memorialize this, I guess, I'll entertain a motion to not include income from a reverse mortgage as income for an applicant of a statutory exemption. I think I said that the right way, did I?
Yes.
Okay. I'll make the motion. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Any discussion or further discussion? All in favor? Dave?
Aye.
I'm in favor as well. Motion carries unanimously. Harold, do we have any new business? I think we're getting close to tax classification time, right?
Yeah, so Dave Golden would have sent you a draft of the classification hearing document. Is that true? I have to admit.
Yes, and Tracy, Ari has also forwarded it to Tracy to be included in the next Board of Selectmen meeting packet.
Yeah, but you sent one to the board members as well, correct? I think I saw one go out to, did everyone go out to everyone?
I don't think I sent it to the full board. I sent it to you and to Ari, and Ari has subsequently sent it along to Tracy. I can send it to the full board, though.
Are you in front of your computer right now?
I'm not, but it's very easily accessed.
Yeah, hang on. I may be able just to forward it now, just so Dave can pull it up and just go through the presentation that Harold's going to make. Let's see. Oh. Of course, it's not coming up like I want it to. You know what happens, Dave? I type your name in and everything else in the world comes up. Oh, there we go. You in front of your computer there, Lamoureux? You're on mute, but I'm assuming you said yes.
Yes.
All right, check your emails, just so you can follow along. Haral, do you have it to kind of?
Yes,
right.
the actual document, I think the highlights are
Yeah,
really.
just so Dave has something to reference. I mean, it's very generic and routine, correct? It's probably a good way to describe it.
So as you all know, the main purpose of the classification hearing is simply to determine whether the town adopts a single tax rate or a split tax rate. We've historically always gone the single tax rate direction. I don't know if the Board of Assessors wants to vote a recommendation to continue with that practice. Might be good to have in hand should the select board ask what the assessors.
Yeah, they tend to do that. I always try to have a quick discussion on it, and if you don't mind, I mean, this is Dave Lamoureux's first time going through this. I mean, there are good, valid reasons why we recommend to not split it and to keep it a single rate. I know the change would have to be pretty drastic in order for the town to really receive any benefit from going to a split rate anyways, correct?
Right.
So, you want to, I mean, I think in the past, Harold, you've kind of given us here's the reason. Here's what you have to do in order to realize any benefit from the split rate.
Right. So if you look at the second page of the document where you see down at the bottom, valuations by class before shift, you'll see that the residential segment of Lakeville's assessment base makes up about 87.5%. So if you do the math, it would take about an 8% increase in commercial, industrial, and personal property taxes to yield a 1% reduction in the residential tax bill. So
in order for the residential community or tax base to receive an impact that they would probably feel, pick a number, pick 5%. I mean, you'd have to have a 40% increase. A tremendously big increase on the commercial end. And we have, in my opinion, we have a limited commercial base anyways in the town. And it's not like we have sewer and other things that, that are really beneficial. I think for the most part, commercial businesses come into town, pay taxes, and normally there aren't a lot of, it's not a lot of heavy lifting on the town to service those properties.
Yeah.
That's why I've always been in favor of keeping it a single tax rate.
Yeah, so actually the next page, shifting the tax burden, the statement takes about a 7% increase to yield a 1% residential reduction. That would be kind of the dynamic at play here.
You will offer percent, so it's only 35% that the businesses would have to absorb for the 5% saving.
Right. The math still works the same way.
Yeah, it's still pretty drastic. So
I will want to talk a little bit about valuations and where they're tracking. You'll see down at the bottom of the next page an average residential value last year at $404,000, going up to $449,000. a pretty strong increase. That's all, of course, necessitated by the fact that we have to respond to market conditions. We'll probably see even a stronger or larger increase next year when 2021 sales factor into our assessments. We are capturing part of that market surge this year. Now, you'll also see that we're projecting a tax rate reduction going from $12.77 to $12.07.
Which is purely a function of simple arithmetic. The values are going up, so the rate's going down. It doesn't mean people's taxes are going down across the board.
Yeah, and I hate to cite averages, but we tend to do that. With a single-family homeowner, they should expect about a $258 increase. But I have to be careful there. The actual impact is to the average property owner is actually less than that, and it's less because that 5% is influenced by our strong new growth number. So the fact that, in other words, the fact that our average FY22 value jumped to 449 is also largely a function of our strong new growth.
Right.
So to get this statistic, we take the total, in this case, the total valuation for all single-family homes divided by the number of single-family homes. Well, if you've added 100 new homes, you've really pushed up that total value figure, and so really, I think most property owners will likely see something on the order of about a 3% tax increase. I wish there were an easier way to display all this so we could talk more realistic tax.
Well, let me ask you a question. Not that we need it. I mean, the hearing's not next week, the week after, but or maybe we can do it. Is there a way for us to spit out numbers that break that, what you just explained out, which could potentially be more palatable or easily understood to say, listen, here's existing homes, new homes, and then the total, or is that not doable or not correct?
It is. And so with David on the line, I would suggest that what we could do is have an average FY22 value net of new growth. And to get that, we would take the total single family valuation, subtract out the value related to new growth, and then do the division. And what you would find is that average would be somewhat less than the 449 too.
Okay, right. And then the percentage change is going to be less too, realistically, potentially even under 3%, which gets closer to, most people assume, listen, Prop 2.5, we can't go up more than 2. And that's what confuses people. They say, well, how can we possibly go up 5%? We 2.5 says we can only, and that's an aggregate number. But to your point, that's because we have millions of dollars in new growth incorporated into that as well. So if you can back it out, I think that may be it a little more palatable. The other thing it does too is it demonstrates, when people complain about, well, they're building and they're putting new projects in place and whatnot, it'll also demonstrate, well, here's what the real income value is from these new projects, right? Because you can say, listen, the town's going to realize X amount more in tax revenue, and that's because the town overall permitted new houses, new commercial structures, new whatever it may be. So there could be a couple of benefits to breaking it out.
So you do see on the second page, the new growth revenue, the $633,712. That is a really strong new growth revenue figure, even compared to the last year or two, which have had very strong numbers as well. But so anyway, I don't know if Ari would be amenable to maybe a little tweak on this. It would have to be footnoted to indicate that the average is net of new growth.
Yeah, we'll reach out to the selectman's office, or I can reach out to them and ask them what their preferences. I mean, the presentation is for them, so, you know, we want to make sure we present it to them in a fashion that makes it easier for them to, I don't want to say understand it. They're going to understand it no matter what, but to make sure it's presented in a fashion that's acceptable to them. So.
Yep.
Okay, I can make a note and I will do that and let you know if we need to change or do what we just talked about, so.
David, do you have any other questions about this whole process? I'm not speaking to David Golden, but David Lamoureux.
No, I follow. Yep.
Okay.
Listen, if you're not, it's not necessarily an official meeting, but if you want to come to a selectmen's meeting on November 29th, Harold and I will be there.
Well, we're doing this by Zoom, right?
Yeah. Well, listen, virtual is the same as being there, I've been told. So that's why we're going to be on Zoom forever. So yeah, we'll make sure. I mean, they haven't posted it yet, but we'll make sure the entire board gets an invite link. And in all honesty, I mean, Paral does the presentation. I think my role is pretty much to introduce him, and that's it. So, but where it is a Zoom meeting, it is convenient. So if you do want to sign on and see what happens, it's pretty uneventful and uninspiring. Don't take that the wrong way.
So, Dave G, I hope you don't mind my doing the presentation this time around, and you as a bystander. I'm hoping next year that, in fact, you'll take the lead and I'll be in the audience.
Oh, no, not at all. Happy to see it one time around, at least.
Well, Lakeville is a pleasant environment. I have to say there are some communities where we get a real grilling. Tax classification, for example, in Sudbury is about a 2.5 hour event. And
oh, wow. Yeah, well, I'm not going to make 2.5 hours, so I think the longest one we've ever had is 10 minutes. So it's not a maybe 15 minutes. All right. Anything else on the hearing? I guess I don't know if we necessarily need to take an official vote, but it is nice to have a consensus from the board as to whether we want to stay single or whether we are boards are recommending a split tax rate. I'm in favor of single. Anybody want to counter that position?
Nope.
Okay. All right. So unless I hear otherwise, I think I'm safe in saying the consensus of the Board of Assessors is to keep the rate single based on the classification hearing presentation and how drastic of a change it would have to be from a commercial standpoint to have any type of impact on the residents. So do we have any other new business? Do we have any old business?
I did want to comment that we were looking to have an short executive session meeting. Unfortunately, Tracy was unable to make that happen for us. And that's to take up a last abatement issue.
Well, if we need to, we can always we can do the executive session first. You know, the issue with the Zoom and the meetings later in the day are that, you know, the staff leaves at a certain time and they're the ones who set this up. So, you know, why don't we probably should dispose of that last abatement item sooner rather than later. So we can do it by Zoom, but let's, I think everything's all set with that. It's just a matter of discussing it and having the board make a recommendation to take a vote, correct, Harold?
Yes.
All right, so
Yeah.
let's work through the selectman's office or the selectman's office tends to take care of the executive session stuff. So I'll work through them to get something put together so we can dispose of this by the end of the month. Been going on a while, so it'd be nice to get it
Yeah.
clean on my desk.
The person who is coordinating did reach out to me for an update. Harold, should you and I connect about our response to that?
The person on the applicant's end?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, you should reach out to them and assure them that we will have a resolution by the end of this month. It's just a matter of schedule.
Yeah, we can do that, Dave.
Perfect. I can do that in short order.
Okay. That would have been under old business. Do we have any other old business? Okay. We have no reason to go into executive session, so it is 5:43. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I will second that motion. Any further discussion? All in favor, Dave?
Aye.
And I am in favor as well. Well, maybe those guys are still hanging around. Meeting adjourned. Maybe those guys are still hanging around. You can finish your basketball game, Dave.